Hey everyone, Blank here, back with another game theory topic. I just lost my notes because my computer reset itself, so forgive me if I'm a bit rambly today at 1 a.m. I'll be putting up footage of a game that really illustrates my point well, as opposed to making out a chart, because last time I tried charting out this idea, I felt like it might get too confusing as opposed to just showing you. So, to begin with this theory, the most important mechanic in gaming ever is the jump cancel. Although it's not necessarily a mechanic in the truest sense, as it is an abstraction between the player character's states. So, what I mean by that is there are primarily three states the player character in not every game, but many games can be in, and that is walking, jumping, and shooting slash attacking. They're kind of the same thing, but the player character changes between these states one at a time, as in they you can walk and then jump, but you can never walk and jump. You can jump and then shoot, but you can never be jumping and shooting, if that makes any sense. So what the player character can do is limited by the and then factor. They're in between frames, lag, etc. All that which separates these states to allow for balance and whatnot. Otherwise, you have a really glitchy game. So, what the jump cancel allows is for the player character to remove the middleman of these in between states, and that with jump canceling, the player character can now jump, shoot, as opposed to jumping and then shooting. And you can walk, jump, walk, as opposed to jumping and then walking. It may not make much sense as I say it, but this gets me into my first example, actually, which is Smash Bros. Melee. And that jump canceling in this game allows for this massive abstraction of how the player character moves. As you know, in Smash Bros. Melee, that game's jump canceling technique is known as the wave dash. And before the wave dash was discovered, as you know, players kind of played the game really normally, but at a competitive level, I'm describing, but players played the game in a really normal fashion, but played it as you would a Street Fighter game, zoning and kind of attacking and following up hits with that. But once the jump cancel was discovered, or the wave dash was discovered in that game, suddenly what characters could do in that game was no longer limited by the and then states of their movement into attacking. And so here we have this one perspective of how the game is viewed, and then the abstraction which allows the player playing the game to view the game and characters in that game from multiple different angles. Sorry if I'm not describing it too well. I'm not really well versed in Melee. We know a bit of it, but I digress. But if you look at examples of how the game was played before wave dashing was discovered and L canceling and whatnot, and you look at it afterwards and how characters were viewed before and afterwards, you notice a massive distinction. And I feel like the jump cancel elevates fighting in that game from just being simple fighting to something much more than that. I can't really think of the word right now, but it's this wave dashing and L canceling and this abstraction specifically in this game is the reason why I believe so many people like Melee and specifically Melee, because at that time there was no other game that really had jump canceling in the same way Melee had it. But now there kind of is, but it doesn't feel the same. Melee has a very specific feeling with its jump cancel. Just like Virtual On has a very specific feeling in its jump cancel. I wish I went more into the importance of jump canceling being linked to targeting in my Virtual On video, because it changes the dynamic of how you fight in the arena so drastically, especially compared to other arena fighting games such as Gundam vs. Zaku or Gundam Extreme Versus. There's the Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm games, Bonso Shiniki, of course. Those other games don't have targeting like Virtual On has it. Virtual On has it linked to jump canceling, while those other games mostly have their targeting autoed on. You just have to be really near the opponent to attack them. Another example of jump canceling and something that isn't a fighting game is Mario 64's backwards long jump, and that's an example of the jump cancel being used between walking and jumping, where I don't know all the technical aspects of it, but you're repeating jump walking, and it causes you to like displace yourself because I don't know how to describe it. I just know it works, but you're displacing yourself with backwards long jumping. But the jump cancel allows for that. That's an example of jump canceling and removing the in-between jumping and walking. And again, just like Melee and Virtual On, jump canceling in Mario 64 has such a specific feeling that elevates the game above so many other platformers, because again, there's no other platformer that really allows for the abstraction or has the abstraction in the same way. That's why people to this day are still playing Super Mario 64, and as opposed to Galaxy and Sunshine. To get into how developers view this, because that is an important factor. These games aren't necessarily supposed to be played in this way, because jump canceling is an abstraction that breaks the player states. And instead of doing what Sakurai did with Brawl and really penalizing the player for discovering and engaging in with these abstractions, I'm sure Sakurai, because he's a really smart guy and really smart gamer, I'm sure he's had his fair share of jump canceling in games, but I don't really understand why he would really punish this abstraction in Brawl to the degree he did, because there are ways you can implement this jump cancel abstraction idea. You can implement this idea officially in games without necessarily removing it completely or penalizing the player. So I think Brawl was a overcorrection and penalizing the player and their movement, their freedom of movement and expression, and elevating characters and whatnot. An example of jump canceling being used, being engaged by the developers. It's not really done much, but maybe it's been implemented in the dash cancel, which is another a more lighter cancel than the jump cancel that allows for another in-between state that allows for a natural transition to replace the and then in-between states. So I'll just use this other game, Rustil Eternus Labyrinth, something. I played it before on my channel, you can find it. But you can dash cancel in that game, where you can walk and dash immediately, and then shoot or attack and dash. And that is an in-between itself that allows for enemy characters to attack the player, because there's a longevity to a dash. Normally because the jump cancel gets rid of the in-between states of jumping and walking, the player can move so fast and outspeed the enemy that it creates this terrible disparity of how the player interacts with enemies. And I am going to make another video discussing player-enemy disparity, which I have lightly touched upon in my Fire Emblem video, so stay tuned for that. But to get lightly into it, you don't want the player to always be more powerful than the enemy AI or CPUs. And so by replacing the jump cancel with a dash cancel, you create a bit of leeway zone the enemy can attack the player. And sometimes there's perfect dodges. Oh yeah, perfect dodges. Some games like Bayonetta have perfect dodges, and if you mess up the perfect dodge, as you know, you either don't get the bonus from that perfect dodge, or you just get hit. So that's an example of jump canceling being officially implemented into a game somehow. This video is pretty short. I'm gonna keep it short because this is such a broad topic. I'm going to edit out the portions that are dead air. And yeah, I hope you like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you think about this theory, and if I'm right or wrong, or if there's another mechanic which you think is equally or more important in gaming. So yeah.